We're going to have a little discussion about stacking enterprises, the benefits of that, how that can impact on your farm balance account, how it can affect on your mental balance account, and the pros and cons. So sit back and enjoy. I'm going to hand it over now to Jake, who's going to chat a little bit about his enterprise and operation, and then James, and then we're going to open the floor and have lots of questions. So take it away, guys.
Thank you very much. Everyone, my name's Jake Wolki. I run a farm business in Womargama, which is half an hour north of Albury, New South Wales, with my wife, Anne, who's filming me. Hi, camera. And if you don't know about our story, we accidentally got into farming in 2019. My health got to the point that I was very frustrated with the medical access we had. I was on 4 scripts. I was on a steroid cream for my skin, and I was on allergy suppressants. I was on script nasal spray, eye dropping tablets to try to control hay fever. I went and got an allergy test when I was in my early 20s. They do the prick test on your back. And how's this for someone who's decided to farm? I'm allergic to dust, dirt, grass, pollen, saliva, and hair. Or I was. And they had me highly medicated for that. And one day it got to the point where the treatment was worse than the dis-ease I was experiencing. And my wife said, stop eating KFC for breakfast. You know better. I was heavily involved in the SAD diet, the stupid Australian diet, SAD diet. It used to be called Standard American Diet, but I've co-opted it. It's the stupid Australian diet now. And I decided if I'm going to eat clean, I don't just want to make the effort to eat a bit better than KFC. We want to go full circle and, you know, what's the best side? And then you go down the organics or the no-till market garden or, you know, whatever it is. And it was really interesting listening to the previous conversation touch on all of those topics. But I found access really hard in our area. We have a small farmers market once a week, and it's very protectionist. You're only allowed 1 beef producer, 1 pork producer, and you turn up at 9 o'clock on a Sunday with your 3 young children and everyone's sold out already. And none of the butchers know where any of their meat comes from, and I couldn't find anything online. So I said to my wife, how hard can it be? We'll grow it ourselves. So that was in 2019. We leased 100 acres, and I did the whole Salatin thing, and I got the cows, and then I got the chickens, and then we got the pigs, and then we got some sheep and goats and beehives and an orchard and a market garden and broilers, and we breed dogs, and it's been chaos for 5 years. It's been chaos. And
Somebody get him a beer.
Yeah, plenty of that. And in 2020, a big bottleneck. We originally were just growing it for ourselves, and then there was a local demand for our produce. And that's national now. We ship national weekly with cold freight, chilled. You know, we sell everything out frozen. And in 2020, we purchased the butchery because that was our biggest bottleneck. So we don't have a conventional butchery where we're open to the market. It's a boning room where we cut and pack all of our own meat, go through local abattoirs, we get carcasses back. We have a 24-hour butchery storefront. So we have a storefront where customers can self-access the building 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's completely unstaffed. And they self-check out. There's a whole process around that we can talk to. And, you know, moving on to where we are in nearly 2025 is we're cutting back on our enterprises slightly. I don't have an agricultural background, so I really look at the last 4 or 5 years as I've thrown everything at the wall and saw what stuck. And, you know, the Japanese talk about the ikigai concept, you know, what the world needs, what you're good at, what you enjoy. I didn't know what I liked raising in an agricultural sense, and I didn't know what I was good at, and I didn't know what my customers wanted, which what customers want actually drives me quite fiercely. And so the 5 years has been a bit of a test on that, and Anne and I feel like we have a bit more of an idea than we did in 2019. So the broilers went and the layers got cut back, and the orchard got the kick, and the market garden got completely axed. I made this comment yesterday, but I'd rather raise 100 steers than 10 meters of carrots. You know, people who raise vegetables need their head read, seriously. Too hard. So
Who wants to eat carrots anyway?
that's right. Yeah. So anyway, that's a bit. We obviously can value. You know, stacking enterprises. Does it work? Well, our business coming into agriculture as first generation farmers with no land access, I can't see us getting a turn any other way. You know, when we lease land or when we purchase land, it really needs to pay because we're not only carrying, you know, land in our area is $10,000 an acre and you've got 7% interest rate. But you can go lease the land at a lot cheaper. That's a whole nother conversation we can have. So, we're pro stacking. Definitely don't do what we do. It's too much. That's our own thing we're sorting out. But I think there's an appropriate level. Just to finish off, James, this is why you got to reel me in. Where I've sort of come through, people come to me all the time wanting to talk about the farming enterprise we have and how we stack. And I just think a really nice complementary way to stack on your property, especially if you're a direct to market producer like we are, is one intensive enterprise and one extensive enterprise. So your intensive enterprises are the ones that you're importing feed for. So whether that's layers, pigs, broilers, whatever you're trying to import that feed stuff for, and then your extensive enterprise are your graziers. And they're both very dynamically different, and I think they complement each other really well on a farm sense, especially for our context. And I think that's a bit more balance.
Jake.
I could listen to Jake all day. It's so much easier than actually talking myself. It's we're sort of, I guess, the opposite background really. So we farmed forever. I think somebody mentioned when I was introduced yesterday that we've farmed in our valley or in the neighbouring valleys for the last 600 years.
You look good.
Yeah, we're hanging in there. Not many carrots, as you could tell, but but actually that's just the paperwork. Like we're literally 600 years ago, we're in the last bit of paperwork in the archive for where we live, and in all that time we must have been deeply unimaginative and adventurous because we never appeared to leave anywhere for anywhere else. Or maybe we just didn't get transported. I don't know. However, that's another kind of lack of imagination on our behalf, perhaps. But we're a very old-fashioned family, and that has good sides and bad sides. I'll talk about the bad side, which is growing up I left school at 15 in the 1990s. We really thought we knew what we were doing, not in an intellectually arrogant way, but just my dad did what my granddad did, and I was supposed to do what my dad did. And why did we do that? Because that's what we'd always done. And I laugh now because I've come to think of farming as a thinking and a systems business. And I wasn't brought up to think, and I wasn't brought up to question the system at all. We just did what we did. It was a sheep and cattle farm. And we did lots of things that weren't actually that old, but we sort of told ourselves they'd been done forever. And when I wrote my book, English Pastoral, which is about the changes to farming in the 20th century, really, for the first time ever, I had to go and grapple with the truth of what that really was. And I can actually remember something different. I can remember being, sort of Isaac's 12, my son. When I was 12, there's still a garden producing most of the vegetables we ate in the house with like 6 or 7 different kinds of vegetables. There were like 3 different breeds of sheep. There were hens for the eggs. There was turkeys for Christmas. There was dairy cows for milk and all the dairy products. My grandma still made butter. We had beef cattle, which is sort of more extensive. We had some hill ground where we had a hill breed of sheep. There's like 6 or 7, 8, 10, 12 different things to eat out of that. And in that mix, my wife will kick my ass if I don't point this out, in that mix are people who know how to do everything. They know how to pickle. They know how to make butter. They know how to process things. They know how to cook the cheap joints of meat from a sheep because you sell the good joints to somebody else and you eat the poor bits yourself. It's full of skills and knowledge. And it only took about 20 years, I think, from maybe 1990, maybe 1985 to about 2005 for most of that to disappear. By the turn of the century, my farm only kept sheep. The cattle even disappeared after the foot and mouth epidemic. So it had gone out to one thing really quickly, and the skills are dropping out of that model really, really quickly. So I think the truth is we used to stack in a very traditional mixed family farm way. We stopped really, really quick as we started listening to what the world said it wanted and what we were meant to do. And I guess the journey that we've been on, Helen and I have been on, is to restack it to an extent. So we brought the cattle back into the hill farm. We've brought things in that no one in my family would ever have done. Like we bring school groups onto the farm. We do various different kinds of sort of educational paid visits to the farm, training, grazing schools. My dad thought that you should keep the public as far away from a farm as possible. Like, those motherfuckers are going to criticize everything. Like, There's going to be a cow dead that morning, and they're going to break their leg in a cattle grid, and Jesus Christ, keep the public away from here. And whatever you do, son, don't invite journalists to come because they'll film everybody dying on your farm. Yeah. So sorry, Dad, we've done the opposite. So yeah, what do we do on our farm? What do we produce in terms of stacking? And we have a pedigree breeding cattle enterprise. We have a pedigree breeding sheep enterprise. The failures of that system go into the meat system, but we don't fatten them ourselves. We sell them to a fellow farmer who has a butcher and an abattoir, and he feeds them on for the following few months or year, whatever, puts them through his butcher shop and tells them about our ethics and our system. That's the sort of halfway house. We did briefly experiment with selling meat, and I mentioned this yesterday. I thought that was great for the first 3 customers, and then like the 4th customer spoke to me for like 45 minutes about how much they loved our system and then bought $15 worth of meat. And I realized, they wanted to come back next week because they didn't have a very big fridge. And I was going to have to trade 45 minutes for every $15 of meat. And they'd read my book, so they really wanted to talk for an hour and a half, not 45 minutes. And they wanted to be my best friends. I'm like, this is really not a business model. This is me being paid to be your friend while you pretend to buy meat. So I'm never going to be the guy that sells meat. That's one of the things I've learned. And then I don't want to get into the negatives too quickly, but I too have watched Joel Salatin and met Joel and done things with him and Richard Perkins and people like that in Sweden. And maybe just to flip this to the next part of the conversation, it looks to me, and my experience of this is you can overstack. And I think it's typical actually for people when they come in to overstack. Can you really do chickens really well over there and pigs over there and a dairy, micro dairy over here and the thing over there and the other? Only if you want to have a mental breakdown, I would suggest. And everybody to a greater or lesser extent, I think they just go boom, boom, with all these things, and then they go, oh shit, you can't leave the farm. Like it needs you, and you end up doing loads of things badly. And it was very, very liberating for me to go to one of my grazing heroes is Greg Judy in Missouri. And I said, Greg, where's the chickens? I watched the film. Where's the pigs in the woods? And he went, got rid of them. Too complicated. Do one thing. His thing was, what's your thing you're good at? Like you want a bit of stacking. And he stacks. He does courses. He does 3 or 4 things. But what's your thing you're really good at? And that really helped me. I was like, okay, I know what I'm good at. I'm good at pedigree livestock breeding of the 2 breeds. I'm not that good at fattening livestock. I'm definitely not good at selling meat. A little bit like you. We sort of spread it out to see what stuck. Yep. And it's good. It's good to try a bunch of stuff, but I don't think it's a sustainable long-term thing. You need then to focus back in. So things like hens, we toyed with the idea of doing the pasture-raised chickens and a heap of hens, and they were going to follow the cattle. Anybody here tried to get chickens in rough country to follow cattle through the landscape? That lasts about a week until you lose your enthusiasm. The chicken coops don't move across the hillside, and the chickens are dumb as shit. They won't move from there to there. And like you look at it going, I like the cow bit, but the chicken bit, that's an absolute pain in the ass. Anyway.
Yeah, thank you both for your insights there. And having been a smallholder in Ireland and done that stacking and been in a personal competition with Richard Perkins, I don't know if any of you follow him, but he is the king of stacking enterprises. So when you do that, you also lose your mind. It's hard. But I think the thing from taking from this is that the stacking enterprises aren't always about the enterprises. Sometimes you are using them as a tool to invigorate your land and to bring in things that you might not necessarily have money to do. So using pigs, using chickens, they all bring their own benefits to soil. So it's not always about the impact that you get economically.
Do you mind if I? Yeah. And also, it can become a bit of a thing where you're doing it because it feels like it's cool because the cool people on YouTube do it. It definitely can go down that route. Things like the chickens following the cows, like nature did work that out. We have crows. Like crows will follow and they'll dig the grubs out of our cow muck. I don't really need chickens to do it. Like there's a bunch of natural things in an abundant farm ecosystem that will do some of that. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we only ever have a couple of pigs, and the joy I get out of a couple of pigs is awesome. Like, who does not want to go and see 2 pigs in the morning that smile at you, chat to you in pig, and which lie down when you scratch their bellies? Like, pigs make life better. Do I think they're the basis of my business plan? No, but we did learn things from having them. Like we have these sort of wilderness riparian strips throughout the farm, not functioning properly, it turns out, until we put some grazing in, pulse grazing, and the absolute winner was pigs, right? English ecosystems should have wild boar in. Wild boar with the plough that came around and caused the periodic disturbance that lets things up out the seed bank. And we had these 2 pigs in the riparian strips. Maybe the riparian strip's no wider than this tent. It's about 1.5 miles long that winds through the farm. We just move them through it, and they disturb like a quarter or a third of it in a week, move them to the next bit. The flowers that came up where they disturbed the following year. And there's just loads of ecologically cool stuff, like in the winter after the pigs had become bacon, which was the best bit. When the pig goes along and lifts the turf over, you lifted those flaps of turf. Underneath every single one was a toad, a red ant nest. 2 minutes after the pigs came and started destroying the place, a robin turns up and sits on the pig, and you're like, oh, the robin's been waiting for 1,000 years for a wild boar to be here. And knows exactly how to do this game. Sorry, I don't want to talk too much.
What have you got to add to that, Jake, as in more environmental impacts to your business from stacking?
Yeah, well, the intensive enterprises, the pigs and the chickens, they kickstart everything. So, we've just we just recently moved onto a new block of land, 150 acres, and it's extremely compacted, set stock with sheep forever. And the rotational grazing, holistic plan grazing and all that, that's fine. We didn't get any rain this year. But bringing the chickens on and the pigs in, and then we're importing nutrients. So the feed we're bringing them, how do you want to quantify how regenerative that is? But we're bringing it in and we're kickstarting our systems. And I'm the same. The chickens are good. The pigs are incredible. Pigs are my favorite enterprise on the farm. And they're anti-fragile. They're just really easy to raise.
And sorry, the other really cool... Due kudos to Richard Perkins. One of the things he does do that I really, really admire is he's not sort of tied to history like I sometimes feel like I'm in my family. He'll just do what's a sensible damn idea. And some of his better ideas are things like pigs can start in May and stop in October. Mm-hmm. You can have the winter where you don't run around like a headless chicken because actually you need a rest in winter. Yep. Like you could have a system with poultry and pigs which turns on and off, can be seasonal and work really, really well. Yep.
Yeah, we turn pigs off over summer. So we generally try to get rid of them by Christmas and get them back in at Easter because we'll have a 46-degree week. It's not fair on these animals out on pasture.
Yeah, I think just on touching on the old style of farming that you mentioned, James, where everyone had a dairy cow, everyone had a couple of pigs, they might have had sheep, someone always had a vegetable garden, fruit trees. I mean, I grew up with that as well. And that wasn't stacking enterprises. That was life. That was just farming, and that was just raising a family in the country. And I want to touch on what Helen said yesterday about that being enough, that it isn't necessarily all about raising KPIs and spreadsheets. Sometimes those beautiful things are enough. And I think that's a really important thing to remember in this climate as well.
I think one of the smartest things we've ever done on our farm is to start taking time seriously. So my dad's life didn't take time seriously because he believed... Sorry, Dad, I'm slightly using you for a talk in Australia. My dad believed that you work from morning till night like a dog, right? So it doesn't really matter how time efficient anything is because you just keep working all the time, and that's what makes you a man, that's what makes you a farmer, right? I only started taking time seriously when I started having off-farm jobs, is the truth of it. And suddenly you're like, oh, I've got 4 kids and a mortgage for a house we built, and I actually need to not worry about the farm for several hours every day. And that actually is maybe weirdly a better farmer, not a worse one. So, and Helen had always done this, but I've really internalized it now. If things are taking a lot of my time or things are hard work, I think that's the universe telling you that's not a very good enterprise, or unless it's very good and very profitable. So things like I'm edging, even though sheep are my thing really, and my family's thing, we're edging towards the cattle. Why? Super time efficient. I can run cattle just on our native pastures without any inputs, without anything going wrong. So we haven't used antibiotics since 2015 on a cow. We haven't assisted with the birth of a cow since 2015 either, not even once. Like, we're getting into crazy land where you say this to a conventional farmer and they're like, what? Something must go wrong. And like, touch wood, not very much when you optimize that natural system and you make it work. And the difficulty we have is that sheep are actually from arid landscapes in terms of evolution. They're hard work. Their feet are hard work. Their coping with parasites are hard work. Now, I bloody love sheep, and I'm so proud of the sheep we breed, but the buggers don't fit easier. And I think I would maybe say to other people starting out, maybe don't get quite as trapped in a culture like that as I am. I'm not going to get rid of the sheep. We put too much effort into them. But I am going to scale it down, and I'm going to focus on a thing that just works easier. Don't be embarrassed by easy. Easy's telling you that it works, I think.
Yeah.
I tried goats. The neighbour had a little goat stud, and I thought I'd buy some goat wethers, and we were leasing river flats on the Murray River. And they turned up beautiful little wethers, and it would have only been 4 weeks, and they were on their knees, crawling around because their feet had started rotting. And I called the neighbour, and I'm like, what's up with these feet? Like, did you sell me dud goats? Or, you know, they're meant to go in your paddock and eat your blackberries and get fat, and then you cut them up and sell them to the local ethnics. I'm thinking this is going to be great. He said, no, you got to treat the feet. I said, well, how often do you treat the feet? 8 times a year. I'm like, why the hell would you have an animal that needs treatment once a year, let alone 8? It made no sense to me.
See, the secret to conventional farming is to stop asking questions like that. Just stop asking awkward questions, Jacob. Do the damn thing. So that's the way I was brought up. And of course, your intolerance for that is actually a gift. Yep. Don't stop asking those questions, I would say. Yeah.
I shot a couple of them and sent the rest to the local meatworks. I'm like, I don't know how to do this animal husbandry. I don't know how to drench. I've never drenched an animal. I don't know how to do it. So the onus on me is to run the system where I don't need to learn these skills.
So we used to breed soft, very fast growing breeds of sheep and cattle that you had to house, you had to use medicines on, you had to use bedding. You'd never be stopped with their feet and jabbing them with antibiotics and stuff. And that's just what we did. And in fact, it was so much the culture of what we did that you'd go out into the paddock and your best top lamb or your best bull calf's lying dead in the paddock, and you would go into a kind of sulky mourning that would last a month because you failed. Like, I remember feeling it, going, oh, if I'd gone yesterday, if I'd wormed them twice this month instead of just once, if only I'd given that antibiotics yesterday, I could have kept the best one alive. And do you know what's really liberating is when you get to the point where you go, it's not the best one, is it? It's dead. Yeah. Do you know what Greg Judy said to me? And he didn't say it in exactly these words. He said, death and disease are useful information when you're running a breeding program, right? If it dies, it's not only not your best one, you idiot. Yeah. It's just told you it's completely unsuited to your system. If it can't breed, it's completely unsuited to your system. If it can't walk around because it has something wrong with its feet, it's completely unsuited to your system. And your job isn't to neglect things. Let's not say that. I defend English farmers if I said that. Lots of my friends work really, really hard mending all those issues. But you'd be wiser, wouldn't you, to selectively breed things that didn't have those issues. And I was really taken that. So Dan Kitteridge said something yesterday, which I can't stop thinking about, which is the utter idiocy of crop growing, where you bring in seed from somewhere else that's unsuited to your place, and you do it again and again and again without any process for the plant and the crop to be selectively bred for your place. And you're like, oh, Jesus, that's like as dumb as our livestock system used to be on our farm. And the other, I've got a friend called Rob Harvard in the UK, who, by the way, if you're looking for a speaker, is awesome about cattle breeding. And his whole thing is the epigenetics thing. Like, livestock of any kind or plant crops are meant to be exposed to the real world challenges and problems that they face. The ones that fail, that's not your problem. That's useful information, and it enables you to then breed and fix the system, fix the design of the system to breed things that don't do that. And it's been an absolute liberation at our house. So now I come in, and we're lucky, we've got super healthy stuff. It works really well. But if something does die, I literally come in and go, bye. You told me something useful. Good night.
I think I think that's a really relevant, important fact, that as farmers, you need to trust your gut instinct around what's going on your farm and what's relevant to your farm. So like you just mentioned, things that aren't suited to your farm are going to be suited to Jake's farm or your farm, and nothing is prescriptive and across the board. And I think we're so lucky in this session to have someone who has had generations of farming and then someone who has come at it from a totally fresh perspective. I don't know which one is better. I think a mesh of the two is incredible. I think what we're going to do is open up the floor to questions. I'm going to repeat the question. If you have a specific question for a particular person, please say so. But fire away, because I think we are so lucky to have these minds sitting here under one tent. Yes.
We just heard Will become talking this morning about time management, and you both talking about time management. And I'm wondering what your day actually looks like. Like, if you're writing books and doing all of those things and rearing children, how are you actually doing that on a time?
Is that for a specific person or? No. So the question was, what does your day look like, basically, if you're involved in all these off-farm activities, children, all those commitments?
We'll start with Monday, 5 a.m. Look, I'm on the record time and time again. For me, farming's the easy bit, and I know as a newcomer with not that experience, it might upset some people, but with the systems we run and the livestock we have, when I actually get out to go into the pasture and move my cows and do yard work with my sheep and feed my pigs, that's my time out. That's actually the stuff I want to be doing. That's the 2 hours of the day where I'm actually having a really nice time. Work for me is logistics, sales, marketing, website design. You know, we ship out, we post out 20 emails a month to market to our base to get revenue in the door. So that in terms of time, we homeschool. We got 3 kids. We don't own a TV, so there's plenty of stuff to do at home as well. But for me, the farming's the fun bit. That's the time out there, the little slots in the morning and the afternoon where I get to take the shoes off and go decompress and pick the eggs with my children. But in terms of actual work, most of it's behind a screen or in the boning room.
Monday morning, 7 o'clock. Okay. Sorry.
Must be a British thing.
Yeah, it took 2 days for the for the Aussies to pull that. I work 80 hours a day. Ripper. Sorry, I've been rude. Go on, I'm going to shock you, and I'm going to actually slightly offend some of you. Naughty boy thing. I've gone from thinking farmers were heroes that worked 18 hours a day. Do you know what I actually think now? I want my farm to be nearly doable in 2 hours a day. And I'll tell you why. Do you know what the most valuable economic thing on a farm is? And my dad would have hated to hear me say this. The most valuable economic thing on a farm is the human brains and the human talent and the human effort, right? And the sad truth is, unless you're absolutely brilliant, and people in this room, including Jacob, might well be, unless you're absolutely brilliant at using that time on your farm to turn it into money, many, many, many of you will need to use some of that time for something else to earn money. And you'll find it easier, unfortunately, to find money doing the other thing. Put your hand up if you have a job as well as being a farmer. Okay, that's half, maybe? So about half of us already know that's absolutely true. Put your hand up if your partner works off the farm while you work on the farm. Similar and some of the same, actually. Complicated. Right. So what I've realized very late in well into middle age is I can earn a heap of money doing another thing, right? Basically, and okay, I write books, and that sounds a bit weird and niche, but actually, it's true of most of my friends. I've got friends who are good welders. I've got friends that work on building sites. I've got friends that do whatever, and they can earn more money by using some of the days of the week or some of the hours of the day doing that. And often it makes sense on a small farm. It just does make sense. Let's be honest. So a few years ago, I started to redesign the farm to go, why is it taking me 10 hours a day? Let's say, could it be done in 2 hours a day so I can juggle and do another thing? And actually, I'm not ashamed of it, because what I'm really talking about is working my ass off for something else for 6 or 8 hours a day to bring in more money, to pay my mortgage, to look after my 4 kids, to think about setting up some kind of succession for them in the future. Those, to me, are not things to be embarrassed about. They're things to focus my time on really, really carefully. So the grazing operation we run, one of the things I love about it is I could be done by 8 o'clock in the morning. And I went to southern Alberta to some big cattle ranches a couple of years ago. 300 beef cows in southern Alberta at minus 36 degrees are something you do outside, something that you do in 15 minutes before you go to town to earn a living, second living doing a job. And I thought, Christ, that's what we're up against. Like, that's so time. Now, if your thing is you'd actually rather spend all day moving cows, the Canadians' answer was, that's fine, get 6 herds of 300 cows. Yeah? Think about it like that. Time efficiency can let you do more of the good stuff on the farm or let you do something else. And I'm absolutely unashamed about that. Do I really only do 2 hours a day farming? No, because I bloody love it. I actually end up spending most of the day like hours doing farms, but non-essential stuff or stuff that I love or stuff where I'm trying to make more money by twisting or doing something interesting with it. But the actual bit where it really, really needs you and won't let go of you, I'm trying to make the design of the farm 2 hours. And the other principle I've got is, can my kids do it? Right? Because I think, as I said before, I think easy is telling you something useful. And the fact that we've left my 17-year-old daughter in charge of 400 sheep, 50 cattle, a whole bunch of other stuff happening right now at home for 2 weeks. And I'm not really worried about it. She's a very good kid, really switched on, and she's grown up doing all of those things. But I'm proud of that, right? It doesn't make enough money to have left 2 guys in charge of it who want to earn a good wage. Maybe that's the clever next trick, but yeah. Time efficiency, getting it to do it in the minimum amount of time is something I think to be proud of and aim for, not something to be embarrassed about. And I really did come to Australia when I was 20 years old, and I really did go to pubs where all the guys were bragging about working 26 hours in a 24-hour period. And it was hardcore. Like, my dad was bad, but some of the Australian guys were worse. So sometimes that's not helping. And I would say to the farming couples in the room, particularly sort of often I don't mean to gender this, but often the wives know this is dumb. Like, that you need a holiday, that you need a rest, that this isn't really the best farming. Very quickly, last thing, we had a bunch of young farmers come from an agricultural college to our farm recently. They were absolutely horrified that I said you could do the farming in 2 hours a day, because and this really shocked me because I'm years away from thinking like that. They actually said, but we want to do farming all day long. They thought it was a negative that the farm didn't take you 10 hours a day. And I'm like, oh boy, you kids have got so much to learn. Yeah.
I love that about working smarter, not harder, if that's what you want to do. Yeah. Yes.
This is a question for Jake. What did you do before you started farming?
So the question was for Jake, and what did you do before you started farming?
Thank you. I left school into year 10. My dad tried to sign me out of high school in year 9, and mum didn't want that. But as soon as year 10, I wagged my last 2 exams. I knew I'd done enough exams to pass. My dad owned a CD, DVD record store in a shopping centre. My family had 15 of them up the East Coast. So I worked with my dad for 4 years, and I look at that as my retail apprenticeship. And then I still remember the day a customer came in and asked for the new Arctic Monkeys album, which was a popular band at the time. And I looked it up and I said, it's released in 7 days. We'll have it to sell you. And he came back the next day and handed me a ripped CD. He'd gone home and found a torrent website called LimeWire and downloaded it and gave it to me. And so I downloaded the torrent website and downloaded the album. And I went out to the back where Dad was in the office and I said, we got a problem. 12 months later, all 15 shops were closed. So my family, we purchased a bicycle store and I went in partnership with my parents. That was 2011. We still have that bicycle store today, and we have a cafe that operates inside of it. So I'm a merchant, generational merchant, sales. And I've had a few little side hustles. I used to buy Rickenbacker bass guitars on America's eBay and then import them with a dodgy custom slip undeclaring their value, and then I'd flip them on Australian eBay. I was like 17 years old. I make $1,000 guitar. I've done all sorts of stuff, yeah.
Stacking doesn't always have to be agricultural. Educating tomorrow's workforce. Fabulous. Yes. Do you want to... Oh, sorry.
Can I make a really quick point? Do you know one of the most depressing things I've learned about farming? That it's so much friggin' easier to make money out of people than it is out of crops and animals. And you're all going to nod and then feel faintly disgusted by this because we all want farming to work. I saw this years ago. All of the places where there's a potter working, right, making pottery, all did this, right? They do a thing where you could buy their pottery for, let's say, $5, like a cup for $5 or something. But if you paid $30, you could go and make a lousy pot yourself, right? People are queuing out the door for experiences. And you're like, oh, for God's sake. And then you could just see it in the potter's face, like, I could make you a nice pot. Like, and farming's a bit like that. Like, I don't want to tell you the crappy bit, but it is so much easier to make money out of people, right? We do a thing on our farm. I try not to do it all the time. If I say we're doing a farm open day and you can walk around with me, I'll tell you about cows, tell you about sheep, and it's $100. And by the way, 50 of you can come. Okay, I've got a little bit of advantage because I've got a lot of followers on social media and people read my books. You can make a lot of money like that. And I'm looking at it going, God, the sheep are making $15 each, like profit or something in the year. And I can make like $1,000 in a day from some people walking around to me, listening to me. And I'm so ashamed to earn money in that way. But like, do what you have to do.
So you heard it here first. Do you want to come up and ask? It'll save us doling. Sure. Yeah.
I guess my question is for James. Like, we don't farm in isolation, and it's a little bit for Jake as well. We don't farm in isolation. So when you talk about changing what you do away from what we think we've always done, that high antibiotics, always looking after the feed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like, how do you deal with the community side of that? Because you've got the neighbour looking over your fence and going, you've got a dead animal there. Or when was the last time you did your feed? And you start to get that. So I was like Jake, I came in, had none of that, just went, oh, well, if the animal's not suited, it's not suited, and taking that approach. But what starts to creep in a little bit is all the people who've been doing it forever starting to say, and so you start to say, well, I've got to look after that animal because it's worth money. And so those sorts of things start to creep into practice, and because you're not doing it in isolation. So how do you sort of cope with that societal or community pressure?
Thank you.
So just really clear, so everybody understands, when we changed our thinking on the livestock that they have to do their job without props, that doesn't actually mean that I leave the sheep lame or let them die. What it actually means is I do the same thing I used to do, but I put a notch in your ear. Okay, so I'm stopping you being part of the genetic progression. I'm stopping you being part of the herd, the flock. I'm ending your genetic legacy. But I'm not actually letting anything happen in the field that the neighbours would say, hang on, you're not looking after your sheep properly. So I carry on doing the right thing, but there's a notch goes in the ear or on the database, and just because that genetic's gone. So we wouldn't do that. But I think your bigger question is, how do you cope with everybody thinking you're a crazy person? Like when you do different stuff. I think the absolute truth I can tell you is we got lucky. My dad's like the most decent, locally respected, hard-working, regular bloke you'd ever find. Everybody around has respected him and liked him. That buys you some goodwill when you start doing crazy things. The other thing that buys us goodwill, not everybody will have that come into farming. So I had that. And the other thing is we still breed some pretty high-end elite cattle and sheep. So we're literally going to the same sale yard, we're going to the same shows, and I can beat my critics, which my daughter in particular loves. She's like, they think you're crazy. I'm like, yeah, but we're winning. Yeah, that shuts people up. You can't, in our game, like I said yesterday, and I'm shamelessly bragging, we a month ago we matched the world record for a belted Galloway bull for 20,000 guineas. The rules of that livestock world are you can't really laugh at the guy that won or the woman that won. Okay, so that helps. Otherwise, grow a thick skin. Do you know who the absolute worst critics are? Old men, right? And oh boy, it's old men. Like in families, they don't want anything to change. Their whole identity's wrapped up in the way we did it. And you're like, Dad, we're losing money. Like it doesn't work anymore. Like the input costs have gone up. And in our valley, there's one or two really grumpy old guys. They tend to be people that makes me laugh. They're actually farm workers. They've never actually run a business. And they think history began and ended in 1993. And how you farmed in 1993 is the only way anybody ever farmed. And if you think you can farm differently, I'm going to tell everybody what a jerk you are. And you're like, come on, you prick. So you do have to, I think part of this is you have to grow a thick skin. You're not actually in the popularity business. You're in the surviving business is how I would put it, as a family or a farm. And we do get bits of kicks, bits of knocks. People don't like what we do or whatever. And I just think, yeah, but I'm going to be there after you're gone. That's what I'm thinking. I'm going to think my who do I owe? It's these lot. It ain't some guy in the pub who thinks he knows more than me and's losing money.
Yeah, I farmed in isolation from any agricultural counterparts for the first 4 years, really. Like, it's only sort of been the last year that I've started meeting other like-minded farmers in person and collaborating with them and trading secrets and getting brought into those WhatsApp grazing groups where there's, the Johann Zeetzman group where people are doing the same grazing methods or whatever. So my story, I thought no one else could do it and I had to do it myself. I couldn't find the stuff, so I started doing it. And my soundboard, my feedback's been direct from market since day one. And now that I'm starting to come to these events and meet other farmers, I'm consistently sledged by my agricultural peers, and everything I know and everything I promote and everything I believe is wrong. But I'm like, but the customers love it. I'm getting paid for it, direct. So I don't really care about peer feedback. My neighbours are friendly. They're fine. I've told one of them to settle down once. I said, that's not your business. We'll do what we do over here. But as long as my signal, I think it's a lot more of a true representation of the market, hearing that feedback loop from the people that actually do pay at the end of the supply chain. Like, I posted a thing on our social media channel, which I'm always tickling things along, about this new feed additive that the dairies and the feedlots are bringing in, Bovir or whatever it's called, and consumers outraged. Consumers don't want it in their food, but start getting inboxes from institutions, from stock agents who supply feedlots. Pull your head in, stop spranting anti-science, this stuff's safe and effective, all the stuff. And I'm like, you guys still don't get it. The people that are paying us all to do the job that they're expecting us to do don't want it. And you're still doing it. And as soon as they say they don't want it, you just criticize them for being dumb or stupid or ignorant. Like, listen to the people you're feeding.
And from the more conventional farming side, I'll tell you what, a lot of the conventional, regular farming guys in particular, they don't want to stand out. They don't want to be criticized for being different. They don't want to be the ones that's has to front up anything new. But what I have learned over the years is I didn't really set out to be one of those people doing anything new or different. And I sometimes feel uncomfortable doing it. As when the criticism comes or the doubters are around you, don't show any doubt whatsoever. Take a deep breath, fill your chest, walk 6 inches higher. Do you know what you find very quickly? That a whole bunch of other sensible people stand alongside you. And they go, I like what you're doing, and I like that you didn't take a backward step about that, and I like the way that Jacob fights for what he believes. And I think we're like that as a species, aren't we? And I am. I suspect Jacob's maybe a sort of braver, more independent person. We like fitting in, we like peer approval, but when we see other people step out and go, actually, no, I don't like that, it gives us permission to stand beside them, doesn't it? So whether you're the person right at the front who's the first one to do it, or the second, or the 200th, or the 300, I think we all need to be people who just go, and I think we all here be the people that go, actually, I don't like that thing, like that bovine thing. No, I don't like it on an ethical, personal level. My customers don't like it. And suddenly there are roomfuls of people and supermarkets full of people going, no, enough of that. Yeah.
I don't want to fit in with losers.
No.
I think on that note, we have to bring it to a close gently. But yeah, I feel like we could literally have these guys up the front of the tent for the rest of the day, and the nuggets. There's a riot starting. I feel too that the nuggets of information that they've given us out of real life experiences is actually what really matters. You can read whatever you like in a book or watch. It's actually learning from people like this. Raise your pitchforks, light your fires.
Can't resist. Has anyone read Robin Wall Kimmerer, the book Braiding Sweetgrass? Absolutely wonderful book. Read it if you haven't. I met her. She's a bloody hero. She's got this sort of Native American wisdom thing going on about many of the things that we would agree with. And somebody asked her at an event I did with the Hay Festival in England, what's your advice to the rest of us? Do you know what she said? I bloody love it. It's a great way to end. She said, raise a family, raise a garden, and raise a ruckus.